Hey, what's going on? It's the year 2020. You might be stuck inside. This is a voiceover. I'm going to try to do this one take. It's the reality of detailing. I'm your host. I'm going to take you through the brass tacks of all things. I'm going to start with this video that on the last one got some criticism. It wasn't the end of the world, though. It was intended to show the capability of Optimum No Rinse in a really, really, really bad situation. The big thing about ONR and every other method and every other style of detailing is there are some individual nuances that will work better for you and your peers versus what works better for me or the guy next door. So keep in mind, this is a baseline, and again, this is a pretty extreme situation. In this video, I will be covering the basics behind Optimum No Rinse, what it may be able to do, and maybe what might be good advice leading up to your ONR wash. I will put what you need on the screen. You're going to need some Optimum No Rinse, obviously deleted by the label. The quick detailer of your choice, quick instant detailer, waterless wash, whatever you have on hand. The big thing is something slick and something that is obviously wet. In this case, I'm using Optimum Instant Detailer. You really can use whatever you like. I'm doing this, and if you pay attention to how much stuff is running off this panel, I'm using this because I want it to drag off anything that it can. If for some reason some cleaner or chemical is going to do more work and still be safe, I'm going to use that first before ever touching it, right? It's kind of common sense, but I'm using this basically as a pillow before I put any sort of wash media or anything else on it. I want it to do more work. You're gonna want wash media that can be sheepskin mitt, that can be a grouting sponge, a natural sea sponge. It can be anything that you find works best for you in your situation, considering your water, the climate, the amount of ONR that you need to get a slick wash solution. Because again, the label is going to cover, probably 80-90%, maybe more percent of cases. It may not cover your individual situation. You'll need a drying towel, probably some spray wax or some spray sealant, and maybe a buffing towel or two. Bear in mind, the best thing you can do before a situation like this is go to a pay and spray if you have one. Go to a touchless wash with something with an undercarriage type of rinsing mechanism, whatever. The big thing is you really want to remove a lot of the road grit. When you live in the Rust Belt and you live in areas that the roads are covered with this brine, it's not just brine, it's brake material, plow filings, stones, sand, little bits of tar with all of this other stuff mixed in. In this particular situation, I used a grouting sponge. Nice and soft, really, really nice to work with. I cut razor blade slits in it. This was, again, 2011 before Optimum came out with that big red sponge. I still find this particular sponge brand to be really effective. When you use ONR, the amount of pressure that you're putting on is very, very minimal. Same as you would with other wash methods. Just enough to hold the wash media on the panel and just enough to get a good amount of slip without it falling. You'll see that as I press on this sponge here, I'm barely putting in pressure. I'm really just kind of gripping it with my pinky and my thumb as if this is a big, large computer mouse, for example. You'll also find, if you pay attention to the bottom part of the frame, there's a lot of fluid, a lot of liquid coming off this sponge. And I'm doing this because I want whatever isn't encapsulated into the pores of the sponge to be rinsed off the car, right? So same other things apply. When we wash a car with anything, when we clean anything, generally speaking, we want to either reserve the dirtiest parts for last or use their own separate bunch of materials, or in this case, I'm going to clean the vehicle from the top high visibility portions like the roof, the hood, the top curvatures of the fenders, the trunk lid, and then I'm going to move down the car. And we do this because obviously we know that a lot of cars have a little bit of a curve underneath them. They're widest maybe at the belt line or so, maybe a little bit below. Cleanest to dirtiest. So in the event something happens, because again, this is kind of a hold me over type situation if you look at how disgusting this car is. We really want to be careful about minimizing the amount of basically cross-contamination of what happens from the bottom dirty levels to the top. You want to make multiple passes. You want to pay attention to any transitions, any panel gaps, anything that can hide grit, dirt, salt, tar, anything that might put the surface at risk and cause you more work in the spring or in the season or time that you have the ability to work on the paint to improve it, right? The big thing about this is working very deliberately and slow. The big thing about success with Optimum No Rinse, which a lot of people are uncomfortable with, are the nuances of the process itself, but it's ultimately developing a new habit, right? So when we think about a 2-bucket method that we use with ONR, a clean wash solution, checking our media all the time, a rinse water bucket, so that anything that comes off the panel, anything that comes off the car in general gets put into this clean water before we pick up more cleaning solution. And that again goes for Optimum No Rinse, regular car soap. You could argue it for waterless wash if you're going through multiple towels, right? You're gonna fold and flip, go to each thing, and that's kind of the dry equivalent, if you will, of using a 2-bucket method. So again, the basics: soak the car, pressure wash as best you can, working from cleanest area to dirtiest, high visibility to bottom portion of the car. Generally, the dirtiest are going to be behind the wheels, the rearmost portion of the car where the air signature is swirling. And maybe in the summer, if you had to use this in summer, it's going to be the front of the car where all the bug impacts happen. Anything that you have a question about, I would separate and do that last. So when you get the panel completely clean, obviously, again, and I hate to reiterate this so many times, but I really want to drive this point home. You want to minimize the chance in a situation like this where you're hurrying. If you pay attention to this video, my hands are pink, and this was shot on a toaster, or it might have been a Pop-Tart that I shot this video with. My hands are freezing because it's really, really cold. So you're working a little bit faster, right? And you can't use hot water because that freezes faster than cold water. Look that up. But you know, you're working as fast as you can to get it done so that you don't freeze, right? Big fluffy towel, and if I'm gonna dry a car, I'm gonna hope that most of it drips off, but I'm gonna pat dry. And I'm gonna do that because if I'm using something with big nap that's picking up everything, I don't wanna be dragging it all over the paint. Glass, sometimes, because glass is so hard, you can get away with it. But again, don't take chances, and maybe just pay attention to each pass of your towel. Look at it, inspect it, move on. Pat dry, get a majority of the moisture off, and then if I'm going to touch a car, and I feel like you should adopt this method, if you're going to touch a car, if you're going to touch paint, regardless of what's on it, you may as well put something on it as kind of a sacrificial layer, right? The purpose in this case, I think I'm using Optimum Car Wax. You can use any spray sealant you want, anything that works for you. Again, it's not product specifics in this case. It's really just the process and the idea behind it. If you're going to touch a car, you add to it, right? So you break up the remaining moisture that your pat dry didn't necessarily get. It goes into the damp side of the towel, and then you can buff off whatever residue. Most things dry clear, over-the-counter stuff tends to dry clear if it's in a bottle. But you can buff off the remaining residue, and guess what? You've added protection. You've made the surface slicker so that the next batch of road grime doesn't necessarily stick as well. And you've basically protected the surface and protected the surface from you drying the surface, which is great. Once you're all done, the big thing is to kind of just inspect the area, make sure that you're good, inspect your towel as you work. And then one point that I missed earlier, if you're going to be washing a panel, you should overlap onto the next panel, right? So you'll pay attention to this corner marker to the right, the bottom right of the screen. You'll see a little bit of the next section that needs to be washed on that. You'll see a little bit of dirt in the bottommost part of this corner. You'll see that I worked top to bottom, and then I started working rear door forward for the purpose of this video, but I'm always going to do top to bottom, cleanest to dirtiest. And for the love of shiny paint, please use common sense. I appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, any comments, if you want to see something specific in a video, I'm happy to do it. I've used this product in their entire line. Optimum's line is absolutely tremendous. I've used it for absolutely years, and it's the one line that I've never strayed away from. Again, this is the reality of detailing, and you can clean your car safely and effectively in pretty much the worst situations without going crazy and without doing any damage. We'll see you on the next one.